number 3 on the trauma lens paradigm shift. The first one was so much about why we need the paradigm shift because of the trauma our kids have experienced. Then the second one was what are some of the things that help us make the shift. The third one, I think, is really important for our families is to be able to start seeing the kids' behaviors through that lens. And one of the biggest behaviors our families deal with is the kids' anger. I mean, we see anger that's dangerous, aggressive, hurtful at times. So how does anger play into this paradigm shift?
Well, what we teach is that anger is actually a secondary emotion that human beings are born with in order to mediate their own fear. You see that in infants all the time. If they cry with fear and no one comes, no one takes care of their fear, what ends up happening is their next cry will be one of rage, one of anger. Their faces will turn purple, and the sound becomes much more harsh and shrieking. And basically, by turning that fear into anger, it sends out into the environment an emergency call that can disrupt adults in what they're doing. And a lot of times in the seminars, I'll mention a fictional parent who's watching a football game and can ignore the fear cry in the next room. But when the baby starts with that loud, piercing fingernails on the chalkboard type scream, it causes the dad can no longer enjoy the football game he's watching. So he ends up going in and picking up the child. So turning that fear into anger is a survival trait that gets a child's needs met when the fear cry doesn't work.
So this is very early in a child's life.
This is something that we're born with. All human beings are born with this. We're born with our first technique is to cry with fear out to a trusted adult, and that trusted adult, usually the primary caregiver or the mom, is supposed to come and mediate that fear. This is seen when you take a newborn infant and lay it up on a mom's chest. At that point, mom may be so weak, so tired that all she can do is put her hands on him and maybe speak a few words. She's not really doing a whole lot to change the environment, but it's enough that the baby's fear level goes down and they usually quiet.
So that she can provide the comfort that the child needs. But then, I think of, we've worked with so many moms that have been addicts or depressed moms.
Well, what we would say is that trauma isn't actually the events that occur to the child. It's the fear those events generate without any assistance to mediate. When these events happen prenatally or pre-verbally for a child, and there's no mother there to help them get out of that fear state where their brain is just terrified, then the natural inclination is to get even more scared to the point where they start turning it into man. Trauma, from our definition, is that experience in life of a fear that you can't put a cap on, you can't mediate, you can't get out of.
Yeah, and we hear trauma in the news all the time, but they don't add that layer in that, these events may be traumatic, but if you have someone who helps you mediate, helps you navigate and make sense of.
In fact, there's times in life when it's absolutely necessary to have someone. You just can't. We were not designed to handle life's fears and terrors alone.
Yeah, what had a lot of meaning to me was the time frame for a baby, the preverbal time, how much more damaging that is when there's traumatic experiences.
Well, exactly. Those are the formative years when the baby's brain is forming those pictures. Am I valuable or am I not valuable? Am I good or am I bad? They form pictures of themselves. They form pictures of the caregiver. Is the caregiver trustworthy and good? Is the caregiver untrustworthy, or is the caregiver actually dangerous? Are they unsafe? So at the same time these pictures are forming, they form at a time in a child's life when that child doesn't have a thinking frontal cortex to act or to get themselves out of a fear state.
It takes me back to so many times we've done trainings and parents will say, but I've got my baby really young, or from the hospital, or 6 months old, or that, and they don't recognize there was a lot of trauma for that baby just to be moved from the birth mom to the adoptive parent.
What creates the trauma is the disruption in that primary caregiver relationship. You know, how many children have we worked with from foreign orphanages who were taken very well care of, but they were taken care of on a time frame, and there was no personal interaction. If a baby was hungry at 4, that was a tough break because feedings were at 5.
Yeah.
If a baby's diaper was wet at 2, well, diapers are changed at 3. So the baby's physical needs were taken care of, but it was never done in an interactive experience with the primary caregiver that is required to produce those pictures in the back of the child's brain.
Well, and this is not for today's topic, but it leads me to the thought about Winnicott and others that have noted we get our sense of self through another person's eyes.
Yeah, by design, through that primary caregiver's eyes. So even when children were taken away at birth, what we need to remember is that their brain was already pre-formatted to pay attention to that primary caregiver. When that primary caregiver is gone, their needs can all be met, but it takes a while for that brain to catch up and reassign recognition of a primary caregiver to the new mom. And of course, multiple placements or multiple caregivers, that just makes that reassigning very much more difficult.
Oh, it does. You know, we've literally seen kids' brains shut down. It's like there's no reason to even recognize they've become so isolated and insulated from people. And
I have never heard anyone suggest that babies are lying there in the crib going, well, my butt is wet right now, but it's only another hour till cleaning time. And no one's ever suggested they have those thoughts, because those thoughts aren't there.
Yeah.
They just want the trigger removed. They want it removed right away. And when it doesn't happen, they learn.
Yeah. So that all leads to, and it, for me, and those days when I was parenting and doing foster care, the baby might get mad, but this kid he's full of rage. How do you make that, how do you fill in that gap to help me understand, oh yeah, there was real rage going on?
Well, again, what we need to do is we need to go back and recognize the experience of the child and the learning that takes place from those experiences. When an infant brain learns, I'm bad, primary caregivers are bad, and the world is a dangerous place, then those pictures are then used to, as the frontal cortex comes online, to create thought processes. And one of the thought processes that are created is, I need to take care of this myself. I can't depend on the outside world to take care of my fears. And of course, for an infant, they have very little window of ability to take care of their fears. And as they get larger, the world's fears increase, and they lose even that ability to take care of them. So what ends up happening is that brain over and over and over again begins to go to anger. I feel scared, I'm just going to go to anger because anger is a lot more effective. I'm going to turn it into anger, and I'm going to yell. I'm going to stress that primary caregiver. I'm going to stress later in life a teacher or a peer in order to get what I want. In fact, once those pictures are formed, I'm bad, caregivers are bad, the world's a dangerous place, what happens is the way to get what you want is to stress the people around you. And there's nothing better than to stress the people around you than turning your fear into anger.
So is this it is not cognitive. It's like, all right, teacher's busy. I'm gonna act up over here to get the teacher back.
Absolutely not. It's just a matter of the picture is back there. I'm bad. Caregivers are bad. I have a need. And the picture in the back of that I have a need, plus that picture in the back of their head tells them exactly what to do. You used in the previous videos, you used the concept of formatting. It's a formatting that's there. Okay, and what they do is they turn that scared into mad, then they they do something, they break a rule, they challenge, they cause the adult in some way, shape, or form to feel fear, with the underlying assumption, which is typically valid, that when that adult gets more stressed, that adult will come and take care of my fear,
And
one way or another.
I'm thinking of the child's system when they start feeling afraid. That system, we talk about cortisol and adrenaline. Our body's being flooded with that, and how quickly, we have found. So many parents say my kid will go from 0 to 100 in a millisecond. And I can only imagine what happens to that baby. The baby system then becomes toddler, then preschool. That system is so hyper wired.
And I like that statement too.
What's that?
They go from 0 to 100 right away. Well, that's because they've learned that all the distance between 0 and 100 was useless. It didn't do them any good at all. They didn't get responses from their environment back in the day by anything except the 100. And oftentimes, one of the worst things about this is very often the child will actually lose the ability to even recognize fear.
I was just having that thought. How many times I've seen kids that are so angry, and they literally have no clue.
Yeah, I remember one kid when we asked him, "Well, tell me, what kind of feelings do you have in a day?" And he was serious, and he thought about it, and he said to me, "Well, I'm angry, and I'm less angry." And that was his range.
Yeah.
That was his whole range.
Yeah.
And that's very often true, whether we like it or not. That's very often true with traumatized children as they grow. We talk about how those early experiences created a hurt part in the back part of their brain that basically contains the pictures, I'm bad, you're bad, the world is bad. And those pictures then in every interaction generate more fear. If someone did something nice for you, like a foster mom buys you a new cup or something, if you think you're bad and you think they're bad, you're going to look at that cup and you're going to have a feeling. And that cup's not going to be warm, fuzzy, oh, my mother loves me, she bought me a new cup. If you already think she's bad and you're bad, it's going to be, why? What's she trying to get here? Why is this here? And these are, I use the word thoughts, but it's not thoughts, they're feelings. And without the cognitive ability to understand what's happening, a child can't even explain to you that nice thing you did for me makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so often they'll minimize the things we do for them. It's like, oh, you must have gotten that free. Nobody else wanted it, so that they get.
What was it on sale or something?
Yeah, yeah. It's probably got a chip on it. It's.
And they'll do things. We think of it as intentional sometimes, but it's not. But like if they drop that cup and it breaks, then that helps them because that reharmonizes. Yeah. See, you brought me something cheap that broke right away. That makes sense now. I understand that.
Yeah.
And that actually serves to reduce their fear. The breaking of the good thing, the loss of it, serves to reduce their fear. Now, it doesn't make them happy, but it makes them a little less fearful.
Yeah. That's, future videos will be about like what happens around holidays, how disasters Christmases are.
The warm fuzzies of Christmas for an attachment disordered child is, that's just not happening.
Yeah, vacations.
It's so hard to watch them go through these things around the holidays because they have that part of them that, they know they part of them said, their front part says, this should be good. I'm going to get toys. But the back part's going, you're not going to get anything good. No, you're just going to prove how bad you are. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's awful. And I mean, the holidays are just a snapshot of what their whole life is like.
Yeah. Yeah.
We ask them to perform in school when in the back of their head they're being told, no, you can't do this. And even if you did do it, they can't be trusted to give you the reward or pass you or do that. You can't be trusted. You have to scam or stress them in some way.
Yeah, and I have a lot of empathy for our parents because they can see the kid seemingly to perform well for a respite provider or a babysitter or a friend who comes to visit, and you see this angel child and you think, oh, who kidnapped my kid? We're dealing with aliens here. And then when those people go away, we have this different experience. of the
Yeah,
child.
there's that tendency, even if you believe you're bad, okay, you think the feeling is you have to scam people. So for new people, or there's a honeymoon period for people that you don't interact with. There's a period during which you can scam them. But as you become emotionally more close to that person, or the relationship grows, there gets a point to which it's not scamming anymore, and that's the point at which their limbic brain begins to fight back and say, no, I'm not really this good. You know, and they'll begin to, well, the classic word is sabotage,
Yeah.
but that's not really what's happening. What's really happening is they're trying to reharmonize or drop their own internal fear levels.
I like your word of reharmonizing. For me, that's putting things back in balance.
Yeah.
It's like let's get it back here where it belongs. I'm bad, you're bad. Let's make sure that everybody gets it.
And we mentioned the harmful effects of the old behavioral paradigms, but that reharmonizing, one of the problems with behaviorism as a family paradigm, and one of the problems with that is that's exactly what it does. It allows the child to harmonize his internal world with the external world. Okay, the assumption, of course, is they'll harmonize it towards the good.
Yeah.
Right? But if the child's brain predominantly is I'm bad, what we don't understand is by creating a behavioral environment, they'll actually harmonize to the bad, because that's their internal picture.
So I have this idea of this one kid of mine right now, and every time you say, okay, tell me about your day, first thing out of her mouth is something bad she's done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is classic.
Or usually, my experience is more of something bad somebody else has done, and then they'll go to themselves eventually.
So what we really want parents to and professionals to get is there's a huge paradigm shift that must take place to work with these families and the children for any kind of healing to take place. You tried to do this any other way? Sticker charts, 1, 2, 3 magic, any of this. We're just dooming families.
And what's really sad about doing it that way is it actually can be healed. There are many different ways to help a child understand that what they're actually feeling isn't a result of the environment. It's a result of what they believe inside and interacting with the environment.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for listening.